I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We're not alone. We are not alone in this universe, and it is a simple fact, and the U.S. government has been aware of that fact now for decades.
I was informed in the course of my official duties of a multi-decade UAP crash retrieval and reverse engineering program.
Describing these vehicles, describe them as alien reproduction vehicles, ARVs for short.
If you believe we have crashed craft, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
Biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
And wouldn't we come together to fight that particular threat?
Welcome to this week's episode of Into the Unknown. So before we get into this week's episode, I want to do some housekeeping. So first off, if you're just listening, thank you. Don't forget to leave us a review on, like, if you're listening to Apple Podcasts or whatever platform you're on. If they allow a review, please leave us one. If you're just listening, though, I want you to know that there is a YouTube channel where you can go and get the video for this. Any field investigations I do are on there for both this and other topics. There's also videos I'm doing. I kind of did like a phenomena overview, and then we're going to start doing like a historical timeline starting at like 1890 up to now. We're going to cover like alleged crash retrievals, abductions, groups that were formed. So, like where you can report your, your experiences, any investigations that were done, like Project Blue Book, the Condon Committee, et cetera, et cetera. Anything basically major, like it's going to be everything you can think of, like abduction cases like Betty and Barney Hill. I'm trying to make sure I don't leave anything out. But yeah, basically anything you can think of, we're going to cover decade by decade and then explain, like to a degree what happened, but I'm also going to leave links in each video. So if you want to like go in depth, like any like books, documentaries, or places like Richard Dolan's channel or UAP Gerb for the crash retrieval, Michael Schrott for the, the interaction of the beings. If there's any like books, like I said, things like that, I'll have links to them in each video. That way, if you want to go in depth, and actually like learn for yourself some more information on that topic, I'll have resources available. But the goal of that series and like other stuff on the channel is to kind of like give you an introduction to this phenomena. Because I've noticed a lot of people, the biggest thing is talking to friends and family. It's like, was this just in the U.S.? How long has it been going on? Where do I start? What kind of evidence is there? Well, we're going to kind of touch on all that. So with that being said, I am going to be launching a Patreon for this soon. I want to get at least like 4 or 5 episodes out. And even once that's out, give it a minute to actually decide if you want to support us. If you do, that'll be an option. Nothing is going to be behind a paywall though. It'll just be if you want to give $5 or $10 a month to the channel. What it's going to do, it's going to go into upgrading my setup. You can tell I need a new mic. I need some soundproofing. And then eventually what I'd like to do is actually get a studio and have people come in when we do interviews and, things like that. It's going to go to actually growing the channel. But with that being said, all that stuff's out of the way. Let's get into the news. So there's been several things this week. So first is if you've been following this, you probably heard, and even if you haven't, because it's been on the news with Donald Trump, like I mentioned last week, and Barack Obama talking about aliens being real and all that stuff. Well, one of the things that had come out of that was Laura Trump, Donald's daughter-in-law said that he had this speech and blah blah blah. The anniversary of Roswell, he's gonna read it. Well, the main person was pushing that is Mark Christopher Lee. He's a filmmaker in this field and a researcher. And he came out recently, I think within like the last 48 hours. I'm just going to read his statement verbatim because he posted it. So this will take a minute, but it's worth hearing. So March 10th, so yeah, this was 2 days ago. I've been completely misled by disinformation, the UFO disclosure saga. My quote-unquote Washington insider source who fed me details about Trump's July 8th speech in the May 1st press conference was likely a plant designed to hype and manipulate the community. I've been pushing the further details on the May 1st conference, but they're not returning calls or emails. Nothing has materialized. No speech, no reveal, and now I see I was used to spread false hope. I suspect it's all been orchestrated. Laura Trump hitting at a prepared speech, Obama casually saying aliens are real, then Trump's directive to release UFO files. It feels like a coordinated tease to string us along without ever delivering the full truth. I deserve the hate and the I told you so's. I took a chance going public with the right motives. Transparency for all, but live and learn. It's taken a real toll on my health. Laura Trump's comments in Trump's file release directive had me convinced there was real truth here. But it's all smoke. The UFO world is full of psyops and lies and keeps us chasing shadows. Sorry to everyone I misled. Maybe I was used to put out the demon aspect of UFOs, which makes me sad. Promoting that narrative feels manipulative now. It happens. He should be glad that this is all that happened. Because, you look at historical cases like Paul Benowitz. We'll get into that on another episode, but essentially they drove that man insane to the point that he took his own life. With feeding him information and everything else. So he should be very glad that all that happened to him was he just got some BS fed to him. But honestly, we shouldn't expect the government to give us any form of disclosure, be it ours or someone else's. There's no incentive in that. What would they get out of it? You have to look at it realistically. There has to be incentive. They're not just going to do this. When has any government ever done anything for the betterment of mankind? Never. Look at all the conspiracy theories that went from conspiracy theory to being true. Like the Tuskegee Airmen and giving them like syphilis to see what would happen. MK Ultra. Then that and the connections between that and like the Unabomber. All this other stuff has only come out. Iran Contra because they got caught. That's it. So there's no reason that they'll ever come out, and anyone should ever expect them to come out and be like, oh yeah, by the way, we've been lying to you for 80 years on this, because not only are they going to have to admit they lied, but then it comes down to what else have you lied to? You haven't given us the JFK stuff. We still don't have the Epstein files, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know why anyone believed that this was going to be the truth. That's kind of my little rant on it, but disclosure is going to have to come from individuals and whistleblowers. That's just how it is. People are going to have to start coming forward and giving up the goods if you really want like hard disclosure or catastrophic, I guess. But, I wasn't shocked to hear this. So that's the first news. The second one was Eric Davis. He's a physicist, Dr. Eric Davis, recently claimed that President Jimmy Carter received a classified UFO briefing. In 1977, this came out of, he was on the Jesse Michaels show, American Alchemist. And he talked to Dr. Eric Weinstein. I think it was like a 3 or 4 hour podcast. And they just went at it at times like cats and dogs about this. And that was like where that came from. Now, the interesting thing is Richard Dolan had mentioned this before. Actually, I've heard not just Richard, but several people mention it. But Richard was told about this about 20 years ago, he said. So he has a video out on that, like what had happened there, that, you know, the Carter was essentially told the aliens were in contact with us, you know, and a bunch of other stuff. I'll have a link to that episode, or to that video, in the comments for this. And actually, the next one involves Jeremy Corbell. I'm not going to play this. I'm going to have the link so you can go watch it. But it says, Lue Elizondo pointed to Pax River as a location where there was a facility built out for $10 million to hold a non-human intelligence craft. I've been warned not to talk about this. F that. It's all in the news. It's all out in the news. So he was on the Duncan Trussell Family Hour, and they talk about several things, but I'll have a link to that episode too. And there's actually right here at Congress of the United States, it actually shows the stuff where, you know, they're going back and forth like between Lue Elizondo and the Committee on Oversight and Accountability. And it has here highlighted like these facilities included locations in the Las Vegas area and a newly built hangar at the Patuxent River Naval Air Station, or PAX. But specifically, the Pax River hangar was designed to facilitate the transfer of future materials via air and river. The hangar was purpose-built to meet the requirements of a Special Access Program facility, so SAP-F, and was capable of accommodating materials at any classification level. I was informed that the funding for the hangar, approximately $10 million, you know, then it goes into the rest. I'll leave a link to this too if you want to read it on your own. The last news thing for this week that I wanted to cover is, remember last week we talked about Major General William Neil McCassland that went missing. It gets weirder and weirder and weirder. So this is from the Sentinel Network, but there's been several updates on this. So it says every outlet ran the same story. An elderly man wandered into the mountains. We ran the hard OSINT. So that's like, you know, your intelligence. The missing man is Major General Neil McCassland, former AFRL commander and executive secretary of SAPOC. So you remember we talked about all these last week. If you haven't listened to that episode, I suggest to go back and give that a listen. The oversight body for every special access program in the DoD. The quote-unquote worried community member on the news? Yeah, well, that wasn't just a community member. It was his Joint Defense Department consulting partner. The quote-unquote civilian wife? She's an astrophysicist and former astronaut candidate directly linked to the 2016 Podesta UAP disclosure emails. The Sentinel Network's full forensic extraction is live, so that I'll have a link to this too, because they go through everything here. So if you're watching this, you can see like the silver alerts here, you know. And again, if you have any information on this, we'll have that in the information or in the description too. But it shows too the partner and institutional relationship map. So there was like the AFRL. So if you don't know what that is, that's the Air Force Research Laboratory, and the Kirtland Partnership Committee. They oversaw, like they were connected to a business partner and Major General William McCassland. And with them, they worked through the DBE Consulting LLC, who was also connected to his business partner, who was connected to Dr. James Tegnelia, I think is how you say it. And then that connects into things like DTRA, so Defense Threat Reduction Agency, DARPA, Sandia Labs, and then I laughed at Sandia because they keep coming up in this topic. And the Defense Science, he was a Defense Science board member. So it's like there's all these different things. Whoop, as I bumped the microphone, there's a bunch of different things he ties into. And what's weird about this, he also apparently was tied to programs for like directed energy weapons and other things that really they're not. It sounds crazy, but it's not. Like we know that they've been trying to work on these things. And actually a directed energy weapon is, if you've ever seen, they'll like hook them, I forget the name of the actual weapon. They essentially shoot almost like, I think it's microwaves. They'll have them like hooked up to the trucks, they almost look like a satellite dish, and they'll use it for like riots and other things. Well, that's a directed energy weapon. So he was overseeing things like that too. I mean, this is a major national security threat. I mean, this guy had one of the highest classifications that you can get, even after he retired from, the Air Force. And he just walked out of his house, left like pretty much didn't take anything with him. And they're saying that like no one saw him disappear. They don't know which direction he went. I don't believe that he had, I'll double check this for next week, but I don't think he even took any like his phone or his Apple Watch or anything with him. Like, it's like the guy just walked out of his house and he just vanished. And it's really weird that this isn't being covered more by all the major news stations and stuff, because this should be. I mean, like I said, this is a major national security threat, especially considering right now what's going on with Iran. If anyone could get any information out of him right now, this is like the worst time to even, to go through this. But it's going to be interesting to see what comes of this. I'm just making sure there was nothing else that I wanted to go over for news, because, so 7 hours ago, so that UFO podcast, Andy posted, the CNN is finally picking up on it. And if they're saying, that he was long associated with, this is what I hate about this. So if you're just listening, again, you can see it on screen, for the video part. CNN says a high-ranking retired U.S. Air Force Major General who once commanded a base long associated with UFO lore. I hate that word UFO lore, because there's paper trails for this stuff. And I guess if we're going to say UFO lore, shouldn't we be able to say then like JFK lore and like 9/11 lore and like all this other stuff? Because it makes it sound like nothing is true. I mean, when you start putting the word lore in there, even if you don't believe in the UAP and NHI thing, which I think is insane at this point, because even the government said, yeah, they're real. We don't know where they come from. Officially, they've said this. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna try not to rant. But point is, it's just crazy that just now CNN is picking up on this. When this happened, like the end of I think we had reported last week that it was like, let me bring up. So he disappeared on, I believe it was the 28th. It was Saturday. So it'll be 2 weeks and 2 days. So 12 days ago, he disappeared, and CNN is just now reporting on this, which is quite insane. Yeah, I'm just making sure nothing else is... because some people tweeted while I was recording this, so I'm just making sure that, like, nothing about this, like, nothing that they've tweeted, oh, okay, this is actually huge. So now there's another missing person. I'm laughing, but not... Okay, this is not... Something's going on now. So, Sentinel Network again posted, we are currently investigating the disappearance of Monica Jacinto Reza as possibly related. Another missing hiker whose advanced super alloy research fell directly under McCassland's financial command at AFRL. There is concern for her well-being. She was last seen on June 22nd, 2025. So this has been going on then. So we'll have a link to this too. Bryan, Massachusetts retweeted, Miss Monica Reza is a fellow in materials and processes engineering at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, or the JPL. She focuses on materials specifically for manufacturing power and propulsion systems, active in the AIAA Aerospace Design and Structures Group. And then they, people start replying with like more info about this. But this is this is getting interesting. So that's someone else that's directly connected to the General McCassland, that apparently disappeared last year. So we'll have information on that too. So if you have like any info, like who to contact and things like this. So I'm glad that I checked the news, because this wasn't even reported on until now. Now people are starting to put the pieces together. But I think that's going to be it news-wise for this week. Let me just make sure, because there were quite a number of people that tweeted. It seems like that happens every time. So if you have the video, you can see me. I'm just looking through. Okay, so that's it for the news this week. I don't really think that I have anything else that I need to talk about. This is a shorter episode at 15 minutes, but there's going to be no real length for these moving forward. It's just however long I need to talk about something. If there's no interview, if there's an interview, do expect these to be quite long at times. We're talking maybe 2 or 3 hours at times. And if you need to watch them, in bits, that's fine. But I just want to make sure when I have people come on and talk that we get to cover everything that, we want. And that if there's any questions that you guys all have, in the comments that you had left, that, those all get asked as well. But I want to thank you for listening. I'll see you next week. And again, if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, because it really does help grow channels. And then on the podcast side, leave us reviews, share again, that stuff. I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. And unless something else crazy happens, I'll see you next week. Take care.